funny cars. In effect, they are short version AA fuel dragsters with plastic bodies, and Don Prudhomme is everywhere today. He owns this car. It'll be driven by Jay Howell, and here Don turns crew member as he pours the solution down for Howell to burn in his tires, heat them up, and move into the starting line area. The funny car is capable of going over 200 miles an hour. It's very light. The bodies are made of plastic. Don Shoemaker has been one of the hot fellows all across the country, match racing and in the national competition as well throughout this year. Shoemaker's car is a Barracuda, and so is the car that Howell will be driving, a Barracuda. And Shoemaker has been very, very steady in all of the competition leading up to the funny car quarterfinals. Buster Couch is the starter. Watch him explode off that starting line. I mean, they leap out of there. Smoking off the line, and Shoemaker at the top end pulls away to a comfortable win, 7.07 seconds, elapsed time better than 210 miles an hour for the winner, Shoemaker. So Don Prudhomme, himself a winner just moments ago, watches his Barracuda lose in the funny car quarterfinals. In case you wonder why these are called funny cars, the reason for that's very simple. A few years ago, when they first came on the scene as an experimental class, the public address announcers called them a funny car. The name stuck. No one's come up with a better one yet. Now we see Bruce Larson and Bobby Wood. That's Bobby Wood, covered up by the smoke as he heats up his tires in a Chevy 2, the red one, and really steaming things up. That Chevy 2 has Chrysler power, incidentally. He'll be running in the near lane, and Bruce Larson and the Camaro will be in the far lane. They're ready to go. And it's Larson in the far lane, the winner, 7.16 seconds, 206 miles an hour. Bobby Wood, 7.22 seconds elapsed time. A close loser. Bruce Larson goes to the semifinals in the funny car.
There were funny cars, and that's that.
They've got the Ram Chargers fired up.
The Ram Chargers are legendary for building more horsepower than anybody else. The big difference and their big success has come from finally finding some reliability. They would always set low elapsed time, but the engines were like a grenade.
The Hawaiian's ready.
Somebody once said that the Ram Charger's car is like a gun. They put a bullet in it, the bullet's the motor, they shoot it, they put another bullet in it. They've been known to bring a whole truckload of motors and use a motor every run. Incredible guys. Roland Leon could make it 2 in a row. He is the defending champion car owner. Roland did it here in 1966 when he won the Winter Nationals and came back the next year with a different driver and won it again.
From the way they both burned out, they appear to be ready to go.
Boy, are they ready. The burnouts are so hard that the tire smoke has even filled up the cockpit. Butch Moss may be having a little trouble seeing out of that car. Listen to that Ram Charger's motor. Just crisp and clean. Moss hanging in the back, trying to get those extra burn-ins. I would imagine that pretty soon Buster is going to make him come to the starting line.
That was probably what the owner of the car was talking to the starter about. He's got his man working a little extra hard on it.
May very well be. May prove to be a wise move. A good strong burnout can be worth 0.15 of a second sometimes.
And that just could be the difference, the way these two machines have performed.
Both cars are pre-staged. Neither driver wants to stage first. Finally, Goldstein does. Moss moves in behind him, and it's a beautiful start. What a finish.
The Hawaiian.
Roland Leon makes it 2 in a row. The first big win ever for Butch Moss, the first time he drives the car.
Boy, that is almost an Horatio Alger story.
Low elapsed time of the event for funny cars, 6.93 seconds, 212 miles per hour. Here's the replay. You just can't make them any closer than that.
Not hardly.
One car length between them at 400 feet a second.
That is Pat Foster in the red car. He'll be on the outside lane. He has the yellow streak down the side of it against Dale Pulte, also in a red car. Now, both of them are taking their time warming up here. They're going out of the bleach box, cleaning off those tires. Here comes Pat Foster, who had the top qualifying time here. But they're going back and forth quite a bit, and that is cooling off the tires. And if you get too much horsepower and those tires cool up, you might go up in smoke, lose traction. We'll see what happens here. They faced each other just a few weeks ago, and Dale Pulte won that one. Pulte on the inside, Foster on the far lane. There they go, and look at them broke behind Pat Foster. He's going up in smoke, losing traction. Looks like Pulte all the way, and Pulte is the winner. His time, 7.57, 181.08 miles per hour. And once again, it's not the speed at the end of the course that wins, it's the lapse time over the quarter mile. And that's why the start is so desperately important. There's our winner, Dale Pulte, going into the finals. Here's our other semifinal pair. That's Ed McCulloch right there, coming out of the bleach box. He'll be facing Jake Johnston. There's Johnston. Wait a minute, he lost his chute. Both these cars are blue. That's Jake Johnston in the near lane. Now, whether he can run or not, I don't know. They're trying to get, no, they're not going to put it back in. They're just going to take it off. Now, it's the question of whether he can run without a chute or not, because it's quite dangerous. You probably reach 200 miles an hour at the other end. Buster Couch, the starter's asking, can he go? And they're saying, yes, he can. So here we go. Jake Johnston versus Ed McCulloch. And there's a red light on the right-hand side for Jake Johnston. And I believe he breaks down. An easy run for Ed McCulloch. Has to make it. He's the winner in the slow time, naturally saving his car, 7.79. And Jake Johnston broke down. I think it's his rear end. The same thing happened at the Super Nationals last year.
Here's Frank Hall. He hails from Linwood, Washington, one of the rising stars of drag racing. He's matched up against the Motown Shaker. This car from Mount Clemens, Michigan, driven by Al Birchler. You see on the back the parachute pack. The parachute's encased in this aluminized cloth, protecting them from fire. As you saw Mert Littlefield, the fire can billow out underneath the car and damage the parachute. It pops out with a spring-loaded pilot chute and helps slow these cars. They used aircraft-type disc brakes to stop them from their speeds of some 230 miles an hour. Full fire suit, face mask, breathers, and of course the goggles that will be put down before Al Birchler makes his run. They're now approaching the starting line in the center of the track. You see the Christmas tree. We'll talk about this Christmas tree a little bit later in the program. Frank Hall making a correction right there in the middle of the course. As the car started to drift towards the center line, he goes through the quarter mile in 6.72 seconds as a very dejected Al Birchler, as something breaks in the funny car. His lovely wife, Jeannie, in to talk with him. You see the burnout being made by Sherrill Greer from Warner Robins, Georgia. Having one of his best years ever, Sherrill Greer, a longtime drag racer. He's meeting up against a relative newcomer in the sport, driving Jim Green's Green Elephant from Linwood, Washington. This is Frank Hall. Clouds of smoke covering the track. We're in semifinal, or round number 3 action. 4 cars remain, now just 3. The winner of this to meet Bobby Rowe in the finals. A good start by both cars. But in the middle of the course, you can see it's Frank Hall. An overflow crowd at Amarillo Dragway, thrilled with excitement at the Pro Stock and now Funny Car Finals. There is Frank Hall from Linwood, Washington, and here Bobby Rowe from Fresno, California, the 2 finalists in Funny Car Eliminator, heading for that World Championship title. Over $25,000, $30,000 invested in these fiberglass replicas of today's modern muscle cars. Late model, supercharged, fuel-burning engines, 1,800 horsepower, speeds over 230 miles an hour. The crews edging up to the starting line, watching ever so close every action by both drivers. Starter Buster Couch, intently gazing at the Christmas tree, making sure both drivers are ready. The tree goes green. They leave together. A tremendous race. Bobby Rowe, Frank Hall nearing the center line, but not crossing, and he is there first. A little bit of smoke out of the car, but everything okay. And there you see Frank Hall winning Funny Car Eliminator. He is your Funny Car World Champion from
From Linwood, Washington, Frank Hall with a winning time of 6.39 seconds. Bobby Rowe, 100th of a second quicker at a 6:38. His speed, 228 miles an hour.
The bunny car eliminations, possibly not the most dangerous, but certainly the most exciting to watch. And this matchup will pit Don Prudhomme of Granada Hills, California, in a 74 CUDA against Charlie Thurwanger of Dallas, Texas, also in a 74 car, this one a Vega.
Without question, Ted, these are the most exciting things to watch in drag racing, as the fiberglass replica bodies give the fan something to cheer for as far as product identification. In this case, the Plymouth Barracuda against the Chevrolet Vega, but also the superstars, Don Prudhomme, involved in this race against Mike Burkhart's Vega, Charlie Thurwanger up in smoke.
Lost the traction, so it'll probably be all for naught in this one as Don Prudhomme crosses the line at 6.42, 215 miles an hour.
Here we see it in slow motion. He gets off the line all right, and right there you see this cloud of smoke billowing out behind, that coming from the tires as they start to spin. He loses traction. Prudhomme not missing a beat, his engine performing magnificently, puts it through the quarter mile at a fine 6.42. Prudhomme has just been dominating funny car action throughout the year thus far.
Ed McCulloch, shown here of Fresno, California, a 74 Dodge Sport. He'll go against Paul Smith of Boynton Beach, Florida. He'll be in the left lane, McCulloch in the right lane.
There we saw a good example of how the mechanics and the driver get in and out of these cars. The body raises up from the front, the engine, the tubular chassis, all the fire equipment, the fire bottles, and you see here the face mask, the breather mask, and the full fire suit required of all the drivers in these funny cars and in many other types of competition cars in NHRA competition.
They also carry bottles of Freon in the car, 2 bottles, one on each side of the engine in case of a fire.
Yes, Ted, these can actually be located in any position. They were located there in this Revolution car of Ed McCulloch on either side of the engine and attached to the chassis, but they are loaded with Freon, and in case of the fire, of engine explosion or fire, the driver just simply hits a button. The Freon is plumbed throughout the body of the car, into the driver's compartment, and also into the engine to extinguish any fire.
Pre-staging lights go on as the drivers inch closer to the starting line. Now we have stage for both cars. And a good start. This should be exceptionally close.
Well, close is hardly the word for it. The win going to Paul Smith at a much slower elapsed time than Ed McCulloch. Must have gotten a much better start. 7 seconds flat to a 6:84 for Ed McCulloch. Here we see a bit of an advantage for Paul Smith. He gets a little bit towards the center line, corrects, comes back in, and it is very close. Anybody's race at this point. You see right there, Paul Smith winning it over Ed McCulloch by less than a fender length.
Back at the starting line, Tom Prock of Utica, New York in a 74 Dodge. He'll be in the right lane.
This is Paul Radici and Wise out of St. Louis, Missouri in the Chevy Vega. And looking in and seeing Radici, the goggles, the fire mask, the breather mask where they can breathe through those filters and the nitro fumes won't bother them at all.
Tremendous concentration at this point.
Really, this is where it is all happening, is at the starting line, and these drivers concentrating completely on getting the best reaction time possible. A good race to this point.
This will be very close.
Some smoke out of the Radici and Wise car, obviously the motor giving him some problems. 6:57 for Tom Prock. And let's take a look at this one again in slow motion. They leave the line together. Things look very good at this point, as you can see. And there it is. Something going awry, the smoke starting to come out, meaning the motor is going away. Tom Prock not having a bit of problem. He goes through in Phil Castronova's car.
A name a lot of fans will recognize around the country, Tom McEwen of Fountain Valley, California. He's also known as the Mongoose. Cheryl Greer of Warner Robins, Georgia. He'll be in a 74 Mustang, and McEwen in a 74 Duster.
That Mongoose moniker came from a long-standing rivalry with good friend, by the way, Don Prudhomme. Tom McEwen known as the Mongoose. Prudhomme getting the first label tied on him as the Snake because of his reaction times at the starting line just as quick as a snake. Well, McEwen, not one to let anything go by, decides, well, if Prudhomme is the Snake, then I'm the Mongoose.
And they've had some exciting matches over the years.
Certainly had. Over a decade for each of the drivers. McEwen with a fine start.
Oh, this is going to be very close. And it's going to be McEwen, but just barely.
2/100 of a second slower, but the advantage coming right at the starting line over Sherrill Greer. You also saw Sherrill Greer slowing a little bit, 206 miles an hour. Maybe he thought, and this is something to look for in this slow motion, maybe he thought that McEwen could never catch him, because we'll see here, but it looks like he may be leading going into this point. He is, but McEwen right alongside of him and drives right past him just before the finish line.
Kosti Ivanov of Boston, Massachusetts. He'll be driving a 74 Vega. He'll be in the right lane. Dale Paulding of Van Nuys, California, the left lane in the 74 Pontiac.
That Pontiac is a Grand Am body style. There are a couple of those entered at this Spring Nationals, and a most unique car and with tremendous horsepower out of Mickey Thompson's shop. Dale Paulding up in smoke. The Boston Shaker of Kosti Ivanov, a 661, taking the win easily over a smoking Dale Paulding.
Explaining that once again, you see a lot of smoke like that. There's no traction. The tires aren't adhering to the track. You're not getting any traction. The horsepower is going to waste.
What they're doing, Ted, is just making another burnout, but not at the right time.
Gene Snow, Fort Worth, Texas. He'll be in the left lane. He's an old veteran of this. Don Schumacher, Park Ridge, Illinois, in a 74 Vega, the right lane. A matchup of identical cars.
Fine shot there of Gene Snow inside the car. You can see him inside the roll cage, very similar to the cage design on a Top Fuel dragster. Schumacher, of course, the Revell Super Shoe, the Revell Snowman, Gene Snow. Tremendous start for Snow. Something apparently down on horsepower for Schumacher as Snow streaks to the win to a 667.
And 6.93 for Don Schumacher. Not a very good race at all. Al Segrini of Silver Springs, Maryland, in the left lane. Leroy Goldstein of Mission Viejo, California. He'll be driving a 74 Satellite, a good burnout.
Al Segrini kind of losing himself in the smoke. In the right-hand lane, driving for Whipple and Mr. Ed. The name Ed Wills, known amongst funny car racers particularly. He builds a number of the bodies that are used on these cars. Art Whipple, one of the finer mechanics around in the business today. Al Segrini driving this beautiful Black Magic car from Silver Springs, Maryland.
Again, they'll be staging very carefully. Again, the concentration, because in drag racing, it all happens at the line.
The advantage that can be gained at the starting line is look at that. Leroy Goldstein going instantly sideways right at the starting line, and Segrini just eases her through.
He slows down. He recorded a 7:05 for that run.
Now look at this. Here you see it in slow motion, almost as if it's on a pivot. I bet he doesn't go 4 feet forward and almost turns the car completely to the right and almost into the guardrail, it looks like. Now he gets it corrected and starts to swing back around. The photographer's moving back as that fiberglass-bodied 1,800 horsepower monster heads right straight for them.
Good reaction time on the photographer's part.
Also good reaction time on the part of Leroy Goldstein. He was headed straight for the guardrail and yet saved any damage to that fiberglass body.
What could have caused that, do you think?
Could have been anything, Ted. Could have been water under the tires, one wheel pulling, the other one not, like you would drive a Caterpillar tractor, something like that. Could be some problems in the differential, also causing it to turn that way.
Now back at the starting line, John Shoemaker of Farmington, Michigan. He'll be in the left lane. Larry Fullerton of Jacksonville, Florida. Fullerton driving a 74 Mustang and Shoemaker a 74 Pontiac.
Fullerton's Trojan Horse Mustang is one of the few 74 Mustang 2 bodies in funny car racing today. It certainly is one of the lowest and wind cheating that you could ask for. He also has problems putting all that horsepower to the ground, too.
And there's the time. 7:46 the winning time for 14:72 for the losing end.
2,000 horsepower propelling these funny cars at speeds over 240 miles an hour from a standing start in just 1,320 feet. Here is the first race of this round. Quarterfinal action. It's Jungle Jim Lieberman against Raymond Beadle. In other action this round, Denny Savage driving the Tri-Town Hustler defeated Norm Wilcox, but Wilcox unable to answer the call. Little John Lombardo beat Tom Brock, and we're ready to between Beadle and Lieberman. Raymond Beadle's Mustang, 6.16 seconds, moving very strong as he defeats Jungle Jim Lieberman. Here's the car that has dominated it. In fact, John Prudhomme has already annexed the World Championship title as he has earned enough points without even winning this race to become the world champion for 1975. His competition, Pat Foster, the Chicago Patrol.
Don Prudhomme has already gone 241 miles an hour with a funny car, the fastest man in history ever to drive a full-bodied car through the quarter mile. He is looking for that magic 5-second run with a funny car. No one has ever done it before. Can Don Prudhomme do it here at the NHRA World Final? In this pass, it'll be Don Prudhomme against Pat Foster. Foster out of Chicago, Illinois. The all-important start. Both drivers concentrating on the Christmas tree as they approach those staging beams, inching into the beams. Reaction time, all important here. Don Prudhomme easily outdistances Pat Foster, a 6.17.
NHRA Championship Drag Racing attracting a 56,000 plus crowd here in 4 days of drag racing at this 76 Gator National. Championship Drag Racing, one of the most popular of all spectator sports throughout the world. Funny Car Eliminator round number 2 in the near lane, Bob Pickett in the Mickey Thompson car. His competition, Tom Hoover. Sitting patiently, waiting for the green light, then exploding into action. Bob Pickett in the near lane has a bit of a lead. And about a 1-car length lead gives him the win at the finish line. His winning time, 6.65 seconds, 221 miles an hour. The losing time, less than a tenth of a second apart, 6.74. The losing time for Tom Hoover at over 220 miles an hour. Here they are in slow motion at half track. Pickett with about a car length lead, and he holds that through the timing traps and takes the win in round number 2 action. Cheryl Greer from Warner Robins, Georgia, the Mustang-bodied car. Here's the Dodge of Tom Prock. These the Castronova brothers. They hail from Utica, New York, and here in Gainesville, Florida, the weather absolutely magnificent. Beautiful sunshiny day. Overflow crowd watching as Tom Brock goes up in smoke, and it is Cheryl Greer taking an easy runaway victory in round number 2. He recorded a 6.40 seconds at over 207 miles an hour. The next pair, burnouts completed. It's Tommy Ivo in the far lane. That's TV Tommy Ivo, former dragster racer, now converting to a funny car. For 1976, this his second major event. His competition, driving Bill Shifsky's car, is Topper Kramer. Both cars now staged. The green light comes on. And it is Topper Kramer with a bit of a hole shot. Oh, what a close race. Tommy Ivo just pulling it out in the last 1/8 of a mile, as the hole shot definitely appeared to go to Topper Kramer. Let's watch. Dancing off the starting line is Kramer, what appears to be about a half a car length lead, but here comes Tommy Ivo in the slow motion replay with a half a car length victory at the finish line at 6.49 seconds. The losing time, 6.56 seconds. The final pair in this second round of Funny Car Eliminator, Don the Snake Prudhomme in the near lane. In the far lane, Johnny White. White with problems, Prudhomme an easy run. But a lot of smoke out of Prudhomme's car, indicating some burned pistons. And racing we do, Steve, in round number 2, 8 cars remaining in Funny Car Eliminator. Waco Willie, they call him, Billy Meyer from Waco, Texas. He is against Dodger Glenn. Dodger Glenn out of Newcastle, Delaware, drives the frantic Ford. Both cars, having completed burnouts, inch their way into the staging beams, ready for a blast down the quarter mile. Let's take a look. Dodger Glenn all over the racetrack. Billy Meyer takes the win easily. His elapsed time, 6.82 seconds. His speed only 170 miles an hour. He knew Dodger Glenn having his share of problems. The low qualifier, Don Prudhomme, the defending champion at the Summer Nationals. Prudhomme also the reigning world champion. You can see the big number 1 proudly displayed on the side of his Plymouth Arrow. His competition, Ed the Ace McCulloch. Two of the top professionals in drag racing. McCulloch into problems right off the starting line. Prudhomme with an outstanding 6.26 second elapsed time, 227 miles an hour. Here's Tom Hoover. Hoover's competition, car out of Stanton, California, Gary Bergen. Hoover based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And Hoover with a big lead over Bergen and continues to hold it through the finish line as Hoover notches a 6.45 second elapsed time. His speed 216 miles an hour. Bergen running into problems right off the starting line. Here we see in slow motion Bergen hazing the tires, the car losing traction right off the line, and that's enough to give the win to Tom Hoover. The crew on the return road lifting the bodies so Hoover can get out and start to disrobe from the extremely warm fire suit worn by all drivers in Top Fuel and Funny Car. R.C. Sherman in the Black Magic car. This one of the few Corvettes in drag racing, Tom the Mongoose McEwen. Three stage lights lit on the Christmas tree, now the staging beams, now the start. McEwen into problems, hazing the tires. And it's R.C. Sherman all the way at 6.90 seconds, 156 miles an hour. He also, knowing that McEwen in trouble, shutting it down, saving the engine for the next round. There you see it, the race lost right there, as not only did he haze the tires, also possibly some mechanical problems.
Those machines just pouring out that horsepower, gulping, inhaling that nitromethane as they move into the staging area. Beetle driving the popular Blue Max. There they go, and it is Raymond Beetle all the way. Beetle with a big victory over Denny Savage in the time of 6.27 seconds. So a happy crew of Raymond Beetles joining him at the finish line. Let's take a look at that again.
Frank, Raymond Beetle had lane choice, and surprisingly, at the last minute, he moved over to the right lane. Looks like it paid off as he hooks up for a solid win.
Here's Carl with the winner.
Raymond, you changed lanes at the last minute. Was that a psych job, or was that something you were looking for right along?
No, we decided it's just the way we pulled up. Thank you, Danny. We decided after last, we run good that last time in that right lane, so we was going to try the left, and we decided, well, we run so good, we might as well stick with what we had.
More semifinal action now. Gordy Bonnet of Vancouver, Canada, the defending champion in this Funny Car event against Tom the Mongoose McEwen. McEwen having perhaps his best season ever. Won the U.S. Nationals, second in the Spring Nationals. They're in the staging area, waiting for the green lights. They got it. Oh, tight race. Bonnet out in front. McEwen coming on strong. It is McEwen, the Mongoose, by a whisker. 6.22, just 600ths of a second separating the two racers. Here you see it again. You see the jump that Bonnet got, but McEwen coming on very strong at the finish. Here's Carl with the Mongoose.
Tom, when we talked to you earlier today, you said if you got past Prudhomme in the second round, you were going to win the race. You're in the final. How do you feel about it?
Feel real good. Everything's going according to plan. I'm just racing it man for man on how I think I have to do without taking a chance on spinning the tires. He got out of me a little bit off the starting line, but I had plenty of power in the middle. I want to make sure it got off the starting line. So I don't know what we turned.
6:22.
So we got lane choice against Beetle.
Here is Gordy Bonnet, the Nationals champion. He's got that right lane. Let's see how he can do as he comes up against the Hawaiian, the car owned by Roland Leong and driven by Ron Colson. In the previous round, Colson ran a 6.35 second elapsed time, while Bonin ran a 6.40. Just 0.05 of a second separated their performances. Bear in mind they were both in the left lane in the previous round, and by virtue of the lower ET, the lane choice going to Ron Colson here in the semifinals. Together, and Colson goes out of control and crosses the center line, which means automatic disqualification. So Gordy Bonin moves into the finals. A fine 6.64 second elapsed time. His speed 231, as the best time turned yet today seems in that right-hand lane by Gordy Bonin. Right here is Ron Colson out of control. You see him heading into that right-hand lane. He backs off the throttle, turns the wheel back to the left, but it's too late. He's already crossed the center line, and that means instant disqualification. You can't cross the center line in any run in competition. Here's Gordy Bonin and Ron Colson.
Gordy Bonin, possibly the only driver this year to make it into 3 final rounds in national event competition.
Well, if that's the case, we're going to have to win it. I mean, we came here, there's only one thing to do, and that's win the darn thing.
Don Garlits just told me that a man can win this race in that right-hand lane.
He's not wrong. I don't know what we ran, but it felt pretty good for that lane. It felt the best run I've felt or seen all weekend in that lane.
In the 660s, and let's go back up to the starting line and see if you win lane choice.
Okay.
Okay, let's watch.
As Gordy Bonin watches, John Force hopefully overcomes his mistake of the previous round and will start the car in low gear off the starting line. He had a big break as he wanted his crew member directing him back into his own tracks, trying for the traction that he hopes against hope will be there. Alongside of him, Trip Shoemake. Driving for Johnny Loper. Shoemake hailing out of Phoenix, Arizona. As he told Steve a little bit earlier, this is the first time he got to the semifinals of a national event this year. In the previous round, Shoemake with a 6.60 easily outdistanced the time by John Force. But all important right now is how quick will they run to determine who gets the lane choice in the finals against Gordy Bonin. And they both smoke the tires. John Force drifting out towards the guardrail. He backs out of it and gets back in it, but it's too late as Trip Shoemake moves into the finals. His elapsed time, 6.88 seconds, and a dejected crew member heads back for John Force's crew to go down and tow the car back as race day is over for John Force. You see the two cars both losing traction right off the starting line, and Shoemake, recovering the quickest, gets the traction back and gets across the finish line first.